Thomas, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm delighted to have you.
Well, thank you, Dirk.
Yeah, and I would like to dedicate the first part of this podcast about your book, What's Your Problem? And that book centers around the question how we can become more innovative in the way that we address problems. Um, and in that book, you describe a particular methodology to solve problems. And the central idea is that reframing a problem can lead to radically better solutions. And you distinguish reframing from analysis. Could you explain, perhaps like a famous example, which I enjoyed very much, like the slow elevator problem, how reframing is a higher level activity than analysis, and why reframing is about finding a better problem to solve?
Yeah, it's called the slow elevator problem, and it really captures the essence of what the method is about. The issue is that you imagine you are the owner of an office building, that your tenants they are complaining about the elevator being too slow, and now how do you approach that? What many people do is to take the problem for granted. The elevator is slow, and then they jump into action trying to find solutions for it to do we have to go out and buy a new elevator or can we make it faster somehow?
Yeah, I can update the software. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, all of those things. And what they miss is that they may be trapped in the wrong problem. And so
Hmm.
the classical illustration of that is, of course, the experienced landlord who knows, oh, this is not necessarily about the speed of the elevator, it's about the fact that people hate waiting. And so to remedy that problem, they might, for instance, put up a mirror next to the elevator, because what happens when people see a mirror, they go, oh, that's beautiful, and they forget time. That example really captures something important about problem solving, namely, don't jump into action immediately. Don't even analyze it, asking like, why is the elevator slow? But start by trying to reframe it, meaning, well, is the speed of the elevator really the problem here? Or is there something else going on that we would be better off paying attention to instead? That's the essence of it. The difference between solving issues, analyzing issues, and then framing them differently. And that's what the book is about.
Yeah. Now, I love that particular example and the way you treat it because I'll be very honest. I immediately jumped to we have to change something about the elevator, either install a new one or a software update or whatever. But the interesting thing is, I also asked it a couple of my executive coaching clients.
Hmm.
Because I said, look, I just read this book about reframing problems, etc. But I hate to say it, they were usually more creative than me, because so in that sense, it was for me also an eye opener, let's say, of my own capabilities and limitations in that aspect. Now, but what I think about the reframing part that you bring up, I think it is also you're right that learning to reframe is also a useful mental defense system because framing can be weaponized.
Hmm.
And can you give an example of how a frame can be weaponized and how we can detect if that is the case?
Yeah. Well, the most classical illustration is, of course, the terrorist versus freedom fighters example. Like something is going
Hmm.
on with an armed insurrection. What do you call it? I'll give you I'll give you probably two different examples.
Yeah.
One is from Uber. In the early days of Uber, when the founder Travis Kalanick was first addressing the issues around safety, well, Uber came up with a very deft framing. They were getting criticism for like the number of safety incidents in their cars,
Yeah.
and I saw him at a conference get up and say, "Listen, Uber is the safest place you could be at night." So very deftly, he shifted the frame from saying it's about our safety to compare it to walking or
Yeah.
driving yourself or like all the other things you would
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Now, that's probably a neutral example. You can, of course, understand why they would want that, but it is an instance in which framing is used to shift your thinking around it.
Yeah.
And the real question is, of course, okay, that's good. Now tell me what you're doing with your safety things. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
uh, that's I would call that a neutral and maybe relatively benign example. Then my favorite example actually comes from reporter Megan Christ, who writes about the idea of carbon footprint. You're familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, where did that term or that concept come from? It was actually developed, Christ reports, by the petroleum industry. It came from British Petroleum. Like they invented that term. They invested a lot of money in kind of making it popular. And why is that? Well, three options here. A, they're genuine about it. Like somebody in British Petroleum genuinely cared about the environment. We have to allow for that possibility. B, it's greenwashing. They are just doing something symbolic in order to kind of look like they're doing well. Better than nothing, maybe, but not much. But what Christ points out is this could also be a framing issue. Because what does a carbon footprint concept do? It positions the problem as that of individual choice. It shifts the focus away from the fact that the company could just do
Yeah, you're
systemic
right.
solutions.
It
Like,
basically it moves from
yeah,
production to usage.
yeah, it's on
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
It,
Yeah, I'm the problem. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. If
yeah.
you don't choose to do the carbon offset,
If I don't fly, then
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And it's like that's almost ninja level kind of framing
yeah,
where you can
yeah,
see, oh, that's actually really deft. I'm now, you know, gently nudged away from thinking about corporate responsibility in this context. So very elegant example, I think, and
yeah,
we could discuss whether it's benign or not. I have my doubts,
yeah,
but once you see that, I think once you like you asked about defense, I think it's about noticing.
yeah,
Once you understand what framing is, once you've seen it in action across different problems, then you
yeah.
start to get attuned to, oh, that's interesting how they framed that. You start simply to notice it.
Yeah, yeah, because if you put up the frame, you also create the arena in which the discussion is going to take place, the constraints,
Correctly.
the boundaries, and yeah, yeah,
Correctly.
yeah,
And you see it all the time.
yeah, yeah. It's a great example. I love it. Yeah, it's a great example. Hey, you also mentioned that we often fall in love with problem framings, and that allows us not to change. I thought that was a real interesting notion. Could you perhaps explain that and give an example?
Yeah, let's say I'm on a team and there's one of my people who's kind of not doing the right thing or whatever, and one part of me wants to change that, but another part wants to avoid conflict. Let's say I'm really conflict averse.
Hmm.
Then I might frame this as, they're never going to change anyway. You can't change people. Like basically what my mind is trying to do is to avoid the uncomfortable discussion with this person. And to that end, it adopts the belief that, it wouldn't matter anyway. Or a closer to heart example, as a writer, let's say you want to write a book, but secretly there's also a part of you that fears writing the book. And what if I don't really have anything to say, and so on. And so instead of confronting that fear, what you do is to tell yourself, well, I need this and that in order to start writing. I
Yeah,
need a new computer.
yeah,
I need to
yeah,
buy this
yeah,
editing program that I've heard good things about
yeah,
before I can get started.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
your brain invents obstacles for you
yeah,
to kind of hold you back from the thing it fears, even if you also want that thing.
yeah.
And so I see that in play a lot. And the really illustrative version is, of course, when you then get the thing and it doesn't help. So you got the new computer, you're still not writing.
Yeah,
What's going on?
yeah.
Yeah.
Nee, but
Uh,
that's always the point that I love because I love blogging, for instance, and a lot of friends of mine also want to get into blogging or acquaintances or whatever. And then I said, well, the only thing you need to do is you basically go to WordPress. You create, it takes you 2 minutes. You register your, your name, and you basically type your text, and you press publish, and you're there. Yeah, but I need to have a theme, and I need to have a design, and yeah, it's just,
yeah.
Yeah, what I like about, and I will quickly read it out for the listeners, and I'll include it in the show notes. Your reframing method includes 5 nested strategies to reframe your thinking of a problem, to make sure you're solving for the right things. So it's first of all, look outside the frame. What are we missing? Secondly, rethink the goal. Is there a better objective to pursue? Examine bright spots. Where is the problem not? Look in the mirror. What is my/our role in creating this problem, and taking the other's perspective in the sense of what is their problem. What I love about it, and that's one of the things that really struck me, is examining bright spots. Where you say, look, where's the problem not? So, can you explain the importance of examining bright spots and perhaps give the example why this is such a powerful notion and what I had to think about? You can come up with any example. In your book, you say, for instance, well, we always focus with retention issues and attrition issues, why people leave, but we could also ask, for instance, why do people stay? So can you basically illustrate the importance of looking for bright spots, perhaps with an example?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite strategies as well because it shifts the mood of the conversation.
Yeah.
With problems, we tend to focus on the negative, but this is something that can like, oh, we may already have solved it. What's the insight? Well, one of the people studying this is back in the 80s, the therapist Steve DeShazer, who realized that often when people have a problem, they have at least solved it once before, like often. So simply by prompting people to look back at their history with this problem, that could make them discover a time where they had effectively found a solution without really noticing it. And that sounds weird, but the human mind is like that. And the essence of the bright spot strategy is simply to ask, in this problem you're dealing with, has there ever been a time when it was less bad or like when it didn't happen? A very simple example I sometimes use is if you're hanging out with a family member and it's always tense when you're seeing this family member. However, half a year ago you spent 3 hours with them and it was actually kind of nice. What was different
Yeah.
about
What
that
made it
day?
different?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful because it sometimes just immediately surfaces a solution. One example, of course, I mentioned that you refer to is this issue of retention, where people do focus on why do these talented people leave. There is for sure interesting knowledge in understanding why some talented people stay, even though they could have left. Going in and truly understanding, wait, hey, you may not ask directly, why haven't you left for a competitor yet?
Everyone's leaving around you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you will realize, oh, there's actually these things about the culture or the however what it is in your company that's worth kind of appreciate getting better at doubling down on that or surfacing that in your retention efforts and so on. So I may share the Tanya and Brian example I have in the book too, where that's on a personal level. But this couple I know, Tanya and Brian, they used to fight a good deal over the budget. And then one day, Tanya notices a bright spot, which is a discussion they had in the morning. So the big insight she had was like, it's not about how we are as people or the issue itself. It's just we're having those discussions after 10 o'clock at night. And by noticing the positive morning discussions, they made a rule in their relationship. It's like, okay, 10 o'clock, we're going to discuss that next morning. So we are much better prepared and kinder towards each other when we're
Yeah.
having the discussion. So
Yeah.
very simple. Try to see when you have already solved it. Try to find the bright spots.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great advice. And another great advice is, and I know the answer to that one, but I think it would be very worthwhile to explain this to the listeners. Is you you basically plea for validating problems, problem framing through real world testing, to get real answers from stakeholders. So, for instance, asking for a down payment. Um, why is testing the framing of the problem with a hard ask so much more reliable than simply asking stakeholders if they would like the proposed solution?
It, I think there are multiple factors. Like, okay, so you have an idea, or you have a notion of what the problem might be. You put it in front of the people who can hopefully confirm or disconfirm it. Now, often people will be polite and they tell you what you want to hear, or they just want to get you out of the meeting, and so whatever gets you there. And that can sometimes lead them to tell you something is not true. In other instances, I think more interestingly, they actually don't know themselves. They may indeed genuinely believe what they're telling you, that they like your thing. However, when it then comes to pulling money out of their wallets and like
Yeah.
giving them to you, that's a different question. And that's really, we know this from the lean startup practice as well. You actually have to test your price point with consumers to make sure they genuinely
Yeah.
value it. The story I tell in the book, Managed by Q, is about two entrepreneurs who do that. They've come up with a service for co-op boards here in the US. They go out and all of the co-op boards are very positive until they pull out like a payment device and say, well, you can get your first placement in this program right now if you put down a small down payment, and very few of them do.
Yeah.
That's when they know that this is not a viable
Yeah.
project. They rethink it, they do it again with a different version of the project aimed at offices, and then 18 out of 25 customers sign up on the spot. That's
Yeah.
when they knew,
Yeah.
okay, we got the right problem, and this
Yeah.
is something people are serious about wanting to be
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I completely agree with you. And what I often see is that people who don't do the hard test, because the theory behind this is not that complicated, is they're just afraid of
Yeah,
the answer. If you
yeah,
understand what I mean. Yeah.
they want to build it, right?
Yeah.
They have fallen in love with their thing, so hey, let's
Yeah.
go build it. Hey, they say they like it, you know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're about to waste 3 years of your life.
Yeah.
Are you sure you don't want to test this?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. No, I love having that acid test in the sense of
yeah,
no, I love doing it. It's like it's also interesting, and I will basically edit this out of the podcast. But one of, let's say, the things that I was quite keen on was painting. I had a period in my life where I painted a lot. People, quite interesting paintings, a little bit impressionistic, pop art type of thing. I had two exhibitions, and my sale was one painting.
hmm,
And I thought, no, it's probably not. No, it's good test
right, right,
because everyone basically said that they loved the exposition, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, I sold one painting, and then I thought, no, it's probably one out of 32 exhibitions. No, probably not
right.
my. No. Probably need to stick basically by staying a consultant or executive coach. Yeah,
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 yeah. Or
yeah.
like see painting as something you do for fun and for
Yeah,
your own
absolutely.
pleasure. But
That's
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
don't take it more
Yeah.
serious than that. Yeah, yeah. Super. Hey, Thomas, before we move on to the next section, which is more like how you as a leader can create a culture of innovation in your company. Any last advice or recommendations for people who want to address problems according to the methodology you set out in this book? And I will basically include all details on the book in the show notes. And any recommendation or advice?
Two. One is apart from, of course, looking into the method, a practice of discussing your problems with other people. Like
Hmm.
it sounds so simple, but very often we think about our problems on our own and then discuss our solution ideas with others. This is like the best shortcut to having your thinking challenged and spotting your own blind spots is if you get into a habit of discussing with at least one other person, like, hey, I have this issue. Do you think I'm looking at the right thing? Like, please, can you challenge my thinking on this potentially? The second advice I have is to try to do that with AI.
Oh yeah, yeah,
AI is actually quite powerful if you know to ask it to reframe.
yeah,
Sometimes if you ask AI, it'll just jump into solution mode.
yeah,
But you can actually ask AI, hey, could you potentially reframe this issue for me? And
yeah,
it will understand that. AI has indeed read my books. I have I have checked that. So my ideas are out there in the machine somewhere, and copyright discussion separately, but you as a listener, at least, hey, you can make
You have
use
to
of
have a
that fact.
conversation with Sam Altman on the.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I do think it's a very positive thing that people have access to a really good potential problem coach here. And the central thing is when you discuss it with AI, like the recommendation is try discussing an emotionally difficult problem with AI.
Yeah.
And in that discussion, specifically ask it to challenge and reframe the way you see the problem. It can actually do pretty well as long as you ask that.
Yeah. Super. That is great advice. Thank you for that, Thomas. If we now quickly shift gears, then I would also love to discuss your book Innovation as Usual, and you co-authored that with Paddy Miller, and it focuses on shifting innovation from an event-based activity to an integrated daily behavior by changing the organizational environment. And I love that book, and one of the reasons why I loved it is because you challenge a lot of common assumptions that we have around, creating a problem-solving culture or an innovative culture in our organization. And the first, let's say, two that I would like to address is the first one is you say, look, most ideas are just bad ideas. And the second is that we should not celebrate failure. I once worked for AT&T and a part of the company that doesn't exist anymore. We always say, and we always said at that time, mistakes are our treasures. Now you have a slightly different take on that. So why are most ideas bad ideas, and should we speak that out? And why shouldn't we celebrate failure? Could you perhaps share your thinking about that? Yeah.
It's part of an overall thing about when it comes to innovation in companies, sometimes we play this game. And the game is almost like a kindergarten version of innovation where we tell the kids, yeah, there's no such a thing as a bad idea. Your idea is lovely, And as employees, we pretend to believe that. And it's almost like that situation where your kid comes back from kindergarten with a lump of clay unrecognizable and go like, that's such a beautiful, and the kid goes, it's Harry Potter. Oh, clearly it's Harry Potter. Of course I saw that at once, honey. Like, I mean, what does this come down to? It comes down to risk. Innovation is risky, and innovation is risky because most ideas don't work out. That's just a fact from research. We know most ideas don't work. They may not fit. We may get unlucky. They may just be plain bad. If you try to pretend that all ideas are good ideas, already there you're starting to lie a little bit to people, and they pick up on it. We're like, oh, now we're playing the game where we pretend this thing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a room for adult innovation, if you will. I think there's room for treating people like the smart, intelligent people they normally are, and say, hey, listen, we know not all ideas are good. What we're trying to do is find the good ones, and we're going to need your help in that.
Yeah.
And that's where the link to celebrating failure is as well. It just came from whenever I saw it, it didn't feel genuine. It felt like a thing leaders felt slightly pressed to do because there was an event, and now we're supposed to celebrate failure.
Yeah, and I have the same idea. If it is also with brainstorming that you basically have to be positive, no matter how stupid, let's say, the suggesting is, it's a collective waste of time. Yeah.
The big insight I had with the book, working with Paddy Miller, my co-author, was many of the ideas we have about innovation come from a very different environment, from the advertising industry, from two people in a Silicon Valley garage building a dating app, and so on.
Yeah.
And that's like this happy-go-lucky, all ideas are good spirit of innovation, Hawaii shirt on, and so on.
Yeah.
What we wrote a book about was the innovating in the context of an organization. You have a day job. It may be in a big company where there's regulatory environments, there's bureaucracy. That's like, now what do you do? And that is really the crux of it. There's where many of those, like the kindergarten approach to innovation, no, let's actually focus on what works, and let's not play these games with our employees.
Yeah. In the book, you list 5+1 key actions leaders who want others to act as innovation architects to take. And I will read them out. I'll also put them in the show notes, but I'll read them out because I think they're important. So first of all, it's focus. So direct people to look only for ideas that matter to the business. Focus beats freedom. I love that statement. Connect. Urge people to connect to new worlds, customers, colleagues, external experts. And your phrase is insights comes from the outside. The third one is tweak. Challenge people to test, challenge, and reframe their initial ideas repeatedly. First ideas are flawed. Select, which is guide people to filter and select the best ideas and discard the rest. To your point, most ideas are bad ideas. Then I love the phrase stealth storm. Help people to navigate the internal organizational politics of innovation. And then you have the stealth storming rules. And then finally, persist. Motivate everyone to continue pursuing the other five keystone behaviors. And creativity is a choice. Now, what I love about it, and I think it goes into the same vein as the last question we discussed, is can you expand on why focus is so important? Because it sounds counterintuitive, and to your point, it's completely different than what we've heard so far. Because so far, in companies always say, "Well, think outside the box and throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks." So why is focus so important?
Uh, the behaviors really came from the observation that it's not about mindset, it's actually about understanding what innovation looks like. Like, if I'm a leader in a big company, what do I actually do Monday morning in order to drive this? And the focus one is such a good example because we just saw a lot of people getting it wrong. Inspired by that, like the Brainstorm Island version of innovation, they told their employees, like, all ideas are good ideas, there's no limits. And that doesn't tend to work too well if you are heavily constrained on time and resources. The leaders we saw succeeding with innovation were the ones who deliberately pointed their employees in the direction of an important problem. They kind of, from their vantage point, they had an understanding of, like, hey, here's what's working well, here's an issue that's costing us a lot of money or that customers
Yeah.
really don't like. Simply telling your people, there is this issue, here's how much it matters to the business. Now can you get creative about that? It can make a tremendous difference because, again, back to the game, the opposite of the suggestion box, where, oh yeah, all ideas, just put your idea in the suggestion box. And everybody, this is a friend of mine, Scott Anthony, talks about that. Like, those are idea graveyards.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, this is the symbolic act of sacrificing my idea to a dark,
Yeah.
box that'll
Yeah.
never really be taken seriously. Um, I mean, it's just such a simple thing. And leaders are so well positioned to do it because they do have a better understanding of, like, they have an overview of where the problems that really matter are. And so simply by focusing your people's efforts, you can see a massive return on not just on the ideas you get in and so on, but also on people's motivation. Because, again, back away from the kindergarten game and into, like, no, let's be adults. We actually know that we are here to try to make a difference on something that matters, and creativity is best put in service of that instead of, like, the blue sky brainstorming type stuff. That's one of the behaviors we emphasize that we see leaders benefit from a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You also used, and I introduced that before, the term stealth storming, because, and then I a quote from the book: successful innovation is as much about politics as it is about having a great idea. Could you perhaps explain why this is the case, and how leaders could support their staff in this area? So, for instance, someone has a great idea, and as a matter of fact, some of my people that I coach basically have that issue. They have a fantastic idea, but it's a question of, how do I basically bring that safely over the line
Yeah.
in the company? So can you perhaps expand a little bit, let's say, about the importance of developing those skills and how leaders could help their staff in this area?
Yeah. It comes down to the fact that many innovative people, people who see themselves as somehow creative or similar, they hate politics. They think, politics is the worst, and I don't want to play that game. And that's a big mistake, because if your context is that, again, you are working in a big organization, like, politics is just part of it. It can hinder you if you ignore it, or it can help you if you know how to harness it. And one of the observations we had around successful innovators in big companies were that they actually understood that and embraced it. So one example I've written about in both books is Jordan Cohen inside Pfizer, who comes up with a new idea. That becomes very successful, ends up getting talked about in the media and so on. And very clearly, he was focused on the politics. He had somebody get involved who's more senior in an informal way to try to help him navigate. Oh, don't take this to procurement. They're not going to understand it. Take it to commercial operations. They'll see the potential in it. Or like simple guidance from somebody who understands the political waters can make a huge difference in whether your idea becomes successful or whether you end up running into a wall. And the advice there is simply, if you're a leader and try to do this, do it for your people yourself. Or if you have somebody, with a good idea, connect them to somebody who can help.
Yeah.
Like, it's so basic, but without at least one person who understands the politics, you are much more likely to crash onto like on the shores of reality. Like, ignoring politics does not work.
No. No, and it's also a pity because it also says a lot about the organization. Because I once worked for a large multinational firm, and the best way to let projects in that firm fail was basically make them bigger. So if someone had an idea where you had an idea of, this is a drama, then the best thing was always to say, well, I think you need to talk to involve John and Carlos as well. And if John and Carlos came, then well, it's still going to take a while before that meeting is set up and the explanation is done, and then it will die. If all fails, basically, then expand the geographic scope. And if I wanted things to be successful, then I basically said, well, basically do it in your own department, bring it to a certain maturity level, and certainly say, well, everyone can kind of open source this. No, it requires, let's say, quite an extensive skill set. And I also have a lot of clients who, have pretty progressive strategic ideas. And to your point, most of them absolutely hate politics. And it's a matter of saying to them, well, look, that's part and parcel of large companies and trying to get innovation going in companies. It's about as much about, let's say, the product or the idea, which you could also have as a standalone inventor or as a startup, as well as, let's say, creating a coalition of the willing to get this to an acceptance stage.
No, it is so fundamental. And I think it's important to understand as well with politics. It's not that, like, there's this myth about innovation antibodies, that people who just want to kill innovation everywhere. That's too simple. Like, often, if you encounter resistance, there's some reasoning behind it. It's not that those people just hate new ideas.
No.
No, you have to understand what's going on. Sometimes you have to circumvent them, absolutely. But don't just assume they're idiots. Like, try to actually understand the nuance of what it is. Sometimes it's small things that makes life easier when you're an innovator, as long as you understand the politics and the different incentives that people face in other parts of the organization.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's also quite often a matter of de-risking the decision for them. For instance, if they see a lot of, let's say, potential issues with, let's say, the idea that you're proposing, then it's also a matter of what can I do to de-risk it. So if I basically tell to them, look, we're going to start to do this from, let's say, in a kind of pilot environment, or we'll basically take this department with us, or we'll involve, let's say, certain stake or whatever, but you can also clearly, let's say, and that's also part of the political skill set, perhaps, de-risk the decision for certain stakeholders.
It comes back to what we discussed earlier around most ideas are good ideas, that misperception, because the people receiving it, they know that most ideas are bad. But you can come in and prove to them that this idea is in fact good by having, exactly as you say, build up some evidence first. Hey, listen, we already have 3 major customers who really love this. Like, now let's scale this.
Yeah, and we know that last time it failed because this wasn't taken into account. This time we did our homework, and we think that technology is now in such a state where, let's say, that risk is pretty minimal, because there's, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's yeah. Hey, we discussed several important elements around supporting innovation on a company level. Any recommendations for leaders in this area that we have not discussed, and which you think would be important to mention?
This links back to reframing, but your first job is actually to diagnose what's going on, because it can be very different across teams, departments, organizations, what's actually holding us back in terms of delivering better results through innovation. And so before jumping into action, going in and studying what's happened in the past and what hasn't happened can really help you understand where to focus your own efforts and say, oh, is this about funding? Is it about politics? Is it about creating focus for people? Or what's missing?
Hmm.
Like a doctor,
Yeah.
you kind of have to diagnose the patient first. And then the second component is, of course, once you've done that, to understand what behaviors need to change. Not mindsets, behaviors. What do leaders need to do different, including yourself? And that's, of course, the guidelines that you listed before. Those are some of the most prominent ones that can help you make progress when you know what you actually have to do Monday morning to drive them.
Yeah. Super. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot from your books, and I'll put them in the show notes. But I even learned even more from this interview. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Dirk. It was a pleasure.